Welcome to another episode of Mistake-Free Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Marck, and today I am pleased to be joined by my good mate from the same state, Jimmy Vreeland. How are you, mate?
Hi, mate. How you doing?
I am awesome. Jimmy is heralding from St. Louis, and he's the co-founder of Cashflow Tactics, a real estate investor, a real estate educator. Jimmy, for our audience out there, tell them a little bit about how you spend your time.
I spend my time as the integrator of Cashflow Tactics. So, kind of like CEO. You and me can talk about this, but kind of the visionary and integrator of Cashflow Tactics, and then I do the same thing for my real estate investment company, Vreeland Capital in St. Louis.
Love it. We'll talk about the perils that is the CEO and the COO trying to be the same, to sit in that same seat in another episode, perhaps.
But it is now, the great debate.
The great debate. As you know, hiring a COO has really, and we actually talked about that in a prior episode about how that's really freed up my time and allowed me to think. I know you're a big believer in taking some time to think, and we'll get into, masterminding today. Today, guys, I want to talk the big takeaway today. We're going to talk about, the responsibility and freedom dichotomy. We want to talk about, what is it that you give up when you want to be free, and what responsibilities do you take on as being a part of this great nation of America that we all live in. And so that's going to be a big topic. So we're going to delve into Jimmy's background and how that relates. And then lastly, we want to talk about masterminding. Jimmy and I met at the Collective Genius Mastermind. For those of you that don't know, Napoleon Hill was really the first mastermind guy out there, someone that was, the first one to realize that it wasn't group think in a negative way. It was group think in an exponential way. And you are the power of the combination of the top 5 guys that you spend the most time with. And so if you can spend your time talking and networking and building relationships with some powerful people, the thoughts and things that come out of that are quite transformational within the business realm. So we'll delve into that. But first, Jimmy, you have a military background. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Yep. And how you got into the military.
My story of like growing up is like it was just sports, kind of like you, right?
For sure.
And then my dad's a kind of a big guy like me, and like, growing up, very intimidating guy. And it's like, hey, you're definitely going to play sports, but you're also going to get good grades. He was a teacher before he started his sales job. And it was just understood that like, you try your best no matter what you're doing. And I'd be like, Dad, I'm playing 3 varsity sports. I got this C. And he's like, is that your best? I'm like, no. And he's like, figure it out. But this is unacceptable. So, when I went to basic training for the military, it was kind of a little bit of a vacation. And it was just...
You're the first person I think I've ever heard say that, right?
I had a basketball coach, and between a basketball coach and my dad, and I'm so grateful for him setting a high standard for bringing discipline into our family. I'm so grateful for that. But like, I got back from base, I go to my basketball coach, and he's like, well, how was it? I was like, compared to you, it wasn't that bad. And then to my dad, I was like, just another day.
So what part of the military did you choose to go into?
So I was actually a field artillery officer, and I was with a Ranger in the 75th Ranger Regiment. So what that meant really was, in movies and stuff, you'll see guys in a battle, and then they'll have aircraft come in and kind of give them fire support from the air.
Yeah.
So whether it be artillery or stuff from an aircraft, I was the guy on the ground saying, drop the bombs here, help us out here.
Wow. So front lines, dude.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a fun job. It was awesome.
You are such a proud American. So first of all, as you know, I'm a proud resident of the country, not a citizen, but on behalf of all those that are, I do want to say, and as a resident, thank you for your service to this country. It means the world, to me, that I get to grow up in a country and my kids get to grow up in a country that, is free from the perils of what lies on the other side of the world, right?
Oh yeah. Well, thanks for saying that, dude.
You bet. So How has that military training? You come back from the military and you jump into business, and I know you're in sales, but when you first jumped into real estate, do you think that it prepared you in a way for leading others in business?
Absolutely. And now, like, you know, that now that I'm the CEO and COO of my businesses, it's like, it was like, it's been very easy for me to do it because I was like falling back on things I learned when I was a 19-year-old.
Give me an example.
Just for a little bit more of the background story, when I was in sales, I was like your basic. I was in medical sales, and so I was like your basic, like hard charging solopreneur, right? And I was all commission, and I was just like, I'm gonna do the job, you pay me, but I don't want to lead. I don't want to do any of this because there was no real incentive to lead, if that kind of makes sense.
Yep.
So then when I started in business, I still like had that attitude of the solopreneur, and it hurt me. It hurt me bad. And then I think subconsciously, I was just like, oh man, I don't want to lead again. Leading means I'm going to get shot at and blown up, right? I had kind of put in the back of my mind, like I was done with that. I was happy to do it. I was proud to do it, but I was done doing that, right? And then you get punched in the face by business so much, and you realize if you're ever going to scale, you're going to have to lead. And so it's that interpersonal communication between you and your team members and actually leading a team. And so even though I didn't like come out of the gates wanting to do it, falling back and doing it, I've really enjoyed the process. Like I really love it now.
How has your communication with your employees changed over time? Because you're a pretty, um, as a military guy, a harsh guy, you've always kind of been the rugged, like, just get it done, get shit done.
Yeah.
How has that changed? Because not everyone wants to be talked like that, and I'm sure you've had to kind of soften up over the years, and your delivery has probably changed from the battlefield to the business boardroom, right?
My use of the F word, I've had to cut out about 90% of it.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a yes and no. Like I deep down believe the right people want to be challenged. They want to be held accountable and they want to see a bigger vision. Right. So whether I'm talking like a salty ranger about that, or I'm just talking as a business person, the cadence is still the same. The intensity is still the same. Now, of course, in the professional world, no cursing, no locker room jokes, none of that stuff. But the basic core of the communication, I think, still the same.
And your team responds. Tell me, how big is your team right now in St. Louis?
So in St. Louis, we have 15 people, and so I'm kind of stacking to get deck, and I'm kind of cheating. But two of the guys went to West Point. But even with them, they're 10 years younger than me. I still tone it down a little. And then Susie's dad was a veteran. My executive assistant Christy's dad was a veteran. So it's like like attracts like. So there's a heavy still military component inside the organization.
No, that makes total sense. So talk to me about, this idea of the freedom. When I say freedom and responsibility dichotomy, what does that mean to you?
So it's like, you want to hear a great American history story?
Please.
So Benjamin Franklin, he's on his deathbed. He can barely like get out of bed because of gout. He's like 80 to 90 at this point, right? When they're forming the Constitution. And they come bring him out. They were carting him around on a cart to get to the meetings and whatnot, right? So he's walking out of the Constitutional Convention, and somebody asked him, he's like, "What did you give us?" And he's like, "A republic, if you can keep it." And there's always been a dichotomy, especially if you listen to founding fathers, between personal liberty and personal responsibility. And I've always been attracted to that kind of paradox and that paradigm. And I really experienced it hard overseas. But with business, I've felt it just as intensely. Because, everybody sees other entrepreneurs' Instagrams talking about, oh, laptop lifestyle, everything's so easy, right? Like I don't have a boss, take this job and shove it type of thing, right?
Yep.
And then that's financial freedom. And that yes and no, but like if you're going to adopt that challenge, you're going to adopt that level of personal liberty, like the responsibility that comes with that is just as intense. Like, how intense is it to answer a payroll, Mark?
You wake up I wake up every month with $200,000 bill having to tick over for that month. And it's like, okay, I hope, how are we going to get through this month? Right. It's like when you
Yeah,
have a couple million in overhead for a calendar year, it makes you stop and think about it. And yeah, no, there's no doubt that, I think in the same way that you're talking about, I think there's also a disconnect. And I think one of the things that I did poorly in growing my business in the earlier years was trying to only hire people that I could afford at the
yep,
time rather than hiring the best and most talented people, knowing that they would 10x my, top line from their excellence. I don't know if you've had experience in that, but there's also, the freedom responsibility dichotomy is also correlates to, business owner and employee to a certain degree.
absolutely. But it's just to get back to what you just said is like, if you go cheap on talent, you're going to pay for it one way or the other. It's either going to be dollars or it's going to be experience. It's going to be bad lessons without a doubt. And the reason I'm laughing is because I'm having flashbacks in my mind of all the cleaning up I've had to do from hiring people because they wanted less salary.
It's crazy.
And
I
then
know.
it's such a razor's edge too, because you can't overhire. And everybody in CG does profit first. And so you can't, it's like it's such a razor's edge. Like, you can't crush all the cash out of your business, yet you can't hoard all the cash out of your business, or you'll never get where you want to go.
No, for sure it's a progression. And I think there needs to be a greater discussion as to the roles that you should look to fill at what time, right? Like you can't just jump in. I mean, I know when Chris and I were on stage, in December of 2020, talking about the CEO COO relationship, and now it seems to be a hot button throughout the org of wanting to hire a second in command, and for those that are just high charging. But I had 24-year-olds come up to me like, "Yeah, man, I'm the CEO," and I'm like, "Okay," and I'm the CEO, and then they talk about being in these roles, and yet they're still in the living room, they're still out there trying to bring deals down. I'm like, well, that's fine. You are a CEO. I get that. But you're also
Yep.
wearing 5 other hats. Like you need to pick and try and remove yourself from the day to day a little before trying to elevate yourself to that top level. And, I think probably in our, small little realm of real estate investing that we live in, I think the CEO role is probably thrown around a little too cavalierly. And probably there's very few that deserve that title. But as you know, the CEO should only be doing 3 things: vision, cash, and people. And
Yep.
so if you're doing anything more than that, then you've got to try and fill those roles. But my point being, as you slowly grow a business and you could go from an entrepreneur, the first thing you do is hire a personal assistant, or a
Yep.
secretary of some description that can totally take all the paperwork off of your load so you can start getting back to thinking and growing rather than doing. Where did you find that your time was best alleviated or multiplied by? What was the most key hire for you when you were building the business?
My executive assistant, Christy.
And is
Like,
she still with you?
oh yeah.
Awesome.
Like, so there's Vreeland Capital BC and there's Vreeland Capital AC. And it's before Christy and after Christy.
Yeah, no,
Because like,
it's an important distinction. Does she help Susie as well?
yeah, so she, for all intents and purposes, if titles were really what we're talking about, like, she would be an integrator. She is EOS trained. It's just I need her to be bouncing around all over the business, and that's why we didn't want to stick her at like one spot. But like, she is just incredible at adding process to things. It's amazing, and holding people accountable.
How long have you had EOS through your organization now?
3 years.
Could you imagine life without it?
No.
I
It
was
was, yeah, I can. And so I guess, do most of your podcast listeners know what EOS is?
Yes, most of them are,
Okay.
for those that don't, EOS is an abbreviation for Entrepreneur Operating System, which is really, I did define it as a lifestyle for a business owner. I mean, it's truly you're committing to a cadence of regular meeting schedules. Your vernacular changes. You start talking in terms of weekly meetups, morning huddles, weekly to dos, quarterly goals, and rocks, and annual performance reviews. And it's you're getting in a cadence of accountability the way that a corporation does at a very high level, on big corporations. But small business owners struggle because they start off just on their own, just doing their own thing, and transitioning from that solopreneur to a business owner is a pretty tough transition.
Yeah, and I think EOS is great at like letting you walk along that line of freedom and responsibility to be a visionary. And then, because when I got out of the corporate world, I didn't want to do anything like the corporate world, right? So there's a lot of accountability in the corporate world. It's like, oh, I'm not going to hold anybody accountable. I'm just going to dream about my business, and that's going to work. And I'm going to run in pastures with lily and flowers and count cash. And like, it turned out that put me in a really precarious situation.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like running with lilies is way easier than counting the cash at the end of the day.
Or you just want to run away from the problems, dude. That's where I found myself. But so, and I love the structure of it. Like, and it's because I would say for most people you're going to meet in the military, I am somewhat of a like free spirit, right? But like things I'm believe in and things I'm disciplined to, I'm insanely indisciplined too. So like, I like structure, but I like to like create the vision. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're a person that takes massive action. Do you want to talk to people about what the CG slap is?
Absolutely. I just
We'll give them an example of one recently, but this is an example, guys, of how Jimmy just takes massive immediate action when there's something that he feels strongly about. We'll talk about the CG slap in a minute. Let's back up and talk a little bit about CG. CG is our real estate mastermind group that Jimmy and I are both a part of, the Collective Genius, nicknamed CG. And it's a pretty strong room. Why don't you talk a little bit about the quality of the individual in that room, Jimmy?
I mean, personally, professionally, spiritually, like I walk into that room and I'm like, oh my God, I got to level up. It's just like, it's some of the finest human beings ever.
And it impacts your business in immeasurable ways, correct?
I don't have a business without CG.
Wow.
I got a hustle and I got a lot of debt.
So tell me the story about how you met Jason and how you actually came to be a part of the Collective Genius.
Okay. So I met Jason at Joe Polish's Genius Network, and Joe Polish is like a leader in the internet marketing space. So when I quit my job, I spent about a year at what I call the Entrepreneurs Elks Club, and which is like, I don't have a boss, dude. I'm the coolest. Now I'm not earning that freedom, not earning that responsibility. I'm not doing all the stuff I need to be doing, but I don't have a boss. So I'm really cool. Right. And so we were doing decent deals, like being landlords and a couple flips a year. And like, I was still like so amazed that I could make money without a W-2 that I was a little too happy with myself. And so I wanted to learn marketing. And so I was a big fan of Dan Sullivan and Joe Polish. And if you ever want me to give you money, this is for you, Mark, and anybody listening to the podcast, you just want like 10 grand. All you have to do is tell me I'm not good enough, and I just will give you money. So here's an example of that. I was like, oh, I'd like to learn more about marketing from Joe Polish. And he's a genius internet marketer. So I go to his joepolish.com, and it's like the first landing page is, are you good enough to join Genius Network? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm good enough. Of course I am. And like the next slide is, no, you're not. And then the next slide is, well, prove it. Give me 10 grand. Sign up. Come to the meeting. And of course, I gave him 10 grand on a credit card, right? Because that's the other thing when you start your own business, you start getting all those interest-free credit cards because you have an LLC. And I was like, well, no interest for a year. I can afford 10 grand for Joe Polish. And so I go to Joe Polish, and like I'm in the room and I'm completely outclassed business-wise, everything-wise. And I'm like, I don't belong here. And so the first thing you do at the meeting is shake the person's hand next to you. And the first person whose hand I shook was Jason Medley.
Life-changing handshake.
Oh my God. Like, I can't even imagine it. And then Jason felt bad because, he explained to me what collective genius was and what he did. I was like, wait a minute, that's what I need. I don't need this room. Right. And so the Jason was like, didn't want to be sniping clients from Joe Polish. So he's trying to avoid me all week. And like, I'm taking from him, like, you're not good enough for my group. So you know what's going to happen if I feel like I'm not good enough. I'm going to give him 20 grand. so Jason was like very polite, very nice, and then I looked into collective genius, but then joined that group. And then like so at West Point, your first day of basic training is called our day, and like that was a rude awakening that day, right? But my first day at CG was, because that's the thing about business and the military, is like the military, it's like a lot of it's physical, and so they shock you physically, right? And so by the time I did it for 10 years, and like I was always like an athlete in high school, not a good one, but like I could withstand physical labor, right? So I was emotionally fine with anything. By the time I left the Rangers, I was emotionally fine with anything physical. But like the business fear of being in debt, of not meeting payroll, of failing, of losing other people's money, because the whole thing about being an entrepreneur, especially real estate, is other people's money is great. You know what's not great about other people's money?
What's that?
Being afraid to lose it.
Yeah.
Like that sucks. And so like that first CG meeting, dude, it was as scary and as taxing as like the first day of basic training. And I know that sounds nuts, but I rolled into that meeting and I had 100 rentals, maybe 120 rentals. So I thought I was really cool. And I didn't have a job. And then everybody in St. Louis was like, you have 120 rentals? You're so cool. Like, you're awesome. And so I didn't have EOS. I didn't have accounting. I didn't have financials. I didn't have metrics, all the important stuff of being a business owner. And then I rolled in that room being like, hey, it's these other real estate investors who can think I'm really cool. And I rolled in and they're like, oh my God, you are so screwed right now. Like, you're going to be, and it was like, once they showed me how screwed I was like in full panic mode.
So let's talk about that day, because a lot of people here would be thinking that same thing. They're like, Jimmy, you got 100 rentals. You must be dialed in. Like, how could you be screwed walking into a room like that? What were the things that stood out to you that you were thinking, oh my gosh, I need to immediately go and change?
No systems, no process, no accounting, no financials. Everything that everything that I'm very proud of and like work towards every day now, I had none of. I just had a hustle and I could run my mouth, like, because I could sell. I'd spent 8 years in medical sales talking to high net worth individuals to get them to buy things for me. So it was really easy to make that real estate sale.
Yep. Wow.
And so it's like being a one trick pony. And then Jason, like Jason has more of an internet presence now. So you guys can find out who this guy is, but he's the nicest guy on earth, but he will not, he likes you too much to ever let you fail. And so if I'm going to get on somebody, I'm going to do it in more of a meathead military manner, like, you dumb mofo, blah, blah, blah. Where Jason's like this, like, really nice Southern gentleman. He's like, well, you might want to consider this. And then he can tell in your eye if you're considering it. And if you're not considering it, he's going to follow you and be like, are you considering this? And he's going to,
you should probably talk to this. Have you thought about calling this guy?
Right. Like, and it's a unique ability of his to do that, but it's like so valuable.
Okay. So fast forward to, what was it? March of 2021. We get down to Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's always great to see you. We sitting around a fireplace in Scottsdale because it was unusually cool actually that week. And you got a CG slap. What is the CG slap?
So the CG slap is like every time Susie and I get on that plane to go to CG, like, I'm like, yeah, I'm smart. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, we're awesome. We're definitely awesome. Like, we're going to have an awesome meeting. And then by the end of the first day, I just see a huge gap of something like, how can we be so stupid? We're not doing this. And so, like, I've had one meeting where I got to Tuesday afternoon before I got the slap. And I'll be quite honest with you, I was a little disappointed. I was like, this meeting's kind of boring. It's because I've had CG slaps about systems, processes, There was this one meeting. This is a lot too long for this podcast, but Eddie Speed told me I was going to jail and I have to redo my entire business. Like that was probably the worst slap. But like every time I get slapped, it just makes me better. And I just have to. Susie knows there's going to be one night in the hotel where I'm going to curl up in the fetal position. She'll be the big spoon. I'll be the little spoon. I'll feel sorry for myself, but the next morning I'm ready to go.
So this example, do you mind me sharing the actual example
No,
of this?
absolutely.
So this one I was actually involved in, and don't know how it first came up. Maybe it'd be better hearing from you directly, but it was to do with retail sales. As you know, Jimmy and I both are kind of in the turnkey space. We sell a lot of rental property, so we're always buying, sub 200,000. Both of us doing some pretty significant volume. Us in Kansas City and surrounding areas. Jimmy in St. Louis primarily, and selling a bunch of inventory to investors that are looking to buy our product. Unbeknownst to Jimmy, we apparently had been doing a little bit more than what you'd been doing.
Well, so yeah, so for the podcast listeners, Mark is a very huge mentor to me, and then the other people who has handed me my hardest slaps in CG has been Lee Arnold. And so since I wanted my slap the first night, I made sure I had dinner with him, right? And so he just looked at me. He's like, "No retail flips? Like, come on, like you're smarter than this." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, I can't be this stupid, right? Let's see. Like if Mark's not doing retail flips, it's just Lee being Lee. I'm not that stupid." And then I go to Mark, "Hey, you doing retail flips?" He's like, "Yeah, aren't you, you dumbass?" And so that was this quarter CG slap.
The CG slap. Yeah, we're in a crazy time where, gosh, we put a house on the market the other day, Jimmy, and it's one that should have probably in a regular market sold for 210. I think our conservative acquisitions agent had budgeted for a 205 sale. We put it on at 234, and amazingly, we get an offer of 245 with an escalation clause up to 265. So, and multiple offers first day. I mean, it's just there's craziness in the market, a fervor in the market, because there's actually in this marketplace right now. So it'd be good to kind of bookmark this, with it being late March of 2021. We officially have 0.7 months of inventory, which means effectively 3 weeks of inventory in the marketplace. So if there was no more inventory coming on the market, we would effectively be sold out in 3 weeks, when the normal marketplace is 5 to 5.5 months. And in the downturn in 2009 and 10, we were somewhere around 11 months of inventory on the market at its peak. So, I mean, there's nothing on the market, and there's still great demand, and interest rates. My goodness, if you're not buying now if you're not looking for your dream home right now, I'd encourage you to do so. 2.75. I mean, they're giving away money.
It's definitely free money. And like, if you're investing, you control your cost of capital and it's this low. It's like, I don't even think you're investing anymore. You're just taking free money.
Yeah. So let's talk about investing, Jimmy. Obviously, you're an expert in cash flow. Tell us a little bit about cash flow tactics. What do you do in that part of your company?
So in that part of my company, it's just strictly educating people, like really uneducating people about investing. Because we talked about this a couple masterminds ago, but like when you're a corporate employee, you don't know what you don't know. You think everything is work for 40 years, shove money into your 401k, and maybe you get to quit one day at 65, when there's these phenomenal investments hiding in plain sight. Like there's these real markets that are happening that you don't need to be on Wall Street for, that are happening in Main Street. And so to get people fully educated, it takes 80 videos on how to do this.
Wow.
Just how bad traditional financial planning is if you want anything other than the average.
It's crazy. The thing that I guess, everyone has a role, and there is a role for a financial planner, clearly. One of the things that I think the real estate industry has done so poorly is cater to, just the high income, high net worth W-2 employee that wants to put money into real estate, but has never had the time or inclination to learn how to do it. And I think for the longest time, rental real estate has always been something that people saw value in, but it's just so cumbersome. I mean, goodness, you and I have beat ourselves up over the years. I mean, you know how hard it is. Yep. But I think this whole mind shift, or this industry that's birthed out of the downturn of these turnkey assets, where it's kind of a done for you investment. We need to educate people out there that there is a chance for someone who's earning, six figures to just say, click, invest in real estate, click, invest in real estate. The same way that you can, invest in Google or Facebook or, Tesla stock, you can also invest in real estate if you have the allegiances and partnerships in place.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that was one of the best points you made in your book for sure. But that's like, so Wall Street's done a phenomenal job that you can just click, 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 invest, right? But to get to the point where you can just click, click, invest, it's like you take all the juice out of the squeeze. And so it's like they've dumbed it down so much that it's like, I mean, I don't have any money in the market, that it's just like there's so many other better places to get yield in a safer manner.
for sure.
And so, and then that's like when I was reading your book, I'm like, that's a personal challenge. Like, how do you present the ambiance and the security that, say, your local financial planner does? Because marketing wise, they do a phenomenal job. And I agreed with you in your book, like marketing wise, real estate people have failed.
And the most heavily marketed product on the market is financial planning. I mean, goodness, you can't. I mean, look how much money. I mean, anytime that they're sponsoring a PGA Tour event or all these high
Yeah.
income events, that UBS, Payne Weber, and Edward Jones and Merrill Lynch. I mean, there's a reason that they're spending millions and millions of dollars every year in marketing. It's because they're raking it in, right?
I mean, absolutely. It's like, it's the retirement industrial complex, for sure.
What's your idea of freedom, Jimmy?
I don't have to do anything that my future better self is not demanding me of me right now. So like as a visionary, like you have a vision of who you want to be and what you want to be doing, right? Like, but there's going to be several disciplining mechanisms that you have to go through to become that person. We're kind of back to freedom versus responsibility. And I take this line from Chris, your COO, what he said at CG, like, the reason I did not enjoy corporate America is because my core values did not align with theirs, or the corporation. And the corporation's a fine corporation with good people in it. It's just different core values. And so I was spending a bunch of time doing things that was not making me better at anything. It was just checking the box, hitting the rat race, stuff like that.
How do you think that will impact the way you parent your children?
I mean, I crush them that they can do whatever they want as long as they work as hard as possible and are willing to how do I say this in a non-army term? Deal with some hard stuff.
Yeah. That's one of the greatest challenges I think we have growing up in America right now is, my goodness, it's a soft culture. And, what you say and how you say it and the social media outlets that they are prone to, it's a very challenging time for young children to go up. There's so much pressure on them to perform. I mean, as you know, Facebook's just a highlight reel, to your point earlier.
Yep.
And my belief is trying to live up to someone's highlight reel. Even Tom Brady's thrown interceptions, right? But you don't see that as
Right.
on, those wouldn't be on Facebook. So my take on the parent, I believe that it's my most challenging role for me personally is how do I parent and grow great children in a world that's trying to make them as soft and entitled as possible.
Well, and that's part of I look at that as freedom. Was like, I can set my own hours. I have the freedom to be with them and spend the time I want with them. And like, I'm going to do what my dad did, is I'm going to use sports as kind of the crucible to teach them lessons, like have them play games so they learn about the real game.
Cool, man. Hey, this has been an awesome call. I'm going to sign off by asking you a couple of questions. As you know, this mistake-free real estate podcast is very much tongue-in-cheek. I'm calling it mistake-free real estate because I have made all the mistakes in real estate. But I always ask my guests, what is a mistake that you have made in real estate that you now have learned and grown from?
Oh, that's a great question. So the biggest mistake that I learned the most from
Yeah, you real estate specific or in life in general, the biggest mistake that you're obviously will have learned and taken away the most from.
There's so many to choose from. I would say learning how to put repeatable, the things that make you successful, learning how to make that into a process that somebody else can execute on. Like you can create something genius, but like if it's only you, it's in your head and only you understand it. It's like it's such a golden set of handcuffs.
That is gold right there. 100% agree with you. And that's one of the things that I suck at. And, part of, my growth as a leader is recognizing my weaknesses and having someone come in to offset those. And that's one of Chris's strengths is, written processes and procedures and policies and manuals. And, it gives me just
It's so
a headache
tedious.
even thinking about it, but it's so critical to success, is it not?
Well,
And
it's going back to like leading and coaching. Like you have a responsibility to set your people to. I got this from you. You told me this. Create a winnable game and keep score. So, like, what coach would not coach their team on how to win? And the process is like the coaching.
And it frees you up also knowing that, as you grow, if someone wants to elevate into a different role, the playbook's already there for the next person to come in and rinse, repeat. It's way, way, way more efficient rather than, oh, well, I don't want to move that person over here because she's so good at this. Maybe I'll have her do both. And there's another mistake that I've made is trying to stretch someone too far, putting way too much on their plate, and not realizing that, their time is valuable and not, because they have a little bit more time to think. They say it's easier to do than to think. And if you give people some thinking time, they're going to get better at what they do rather than just trying to, overwhelm someone with busy work all the time.
Yeah, it's the same dichotomy that you've talked about. Like you needed some time to think. Like if you have high, talented, ambitious teammates, they need the same thing.
Jimmy, it's been a pleasure, mate. Credit you for all that. One of the things I'll say in summation is you are someone I look at and admire and respect because you have a phenomenal memory, which serves you very, very well in business. When you hear someone say something, you have great recall, which allows you to follow through. And you're one of the most humble guys I know, in that you actually, are so self-deprecating most of the time, saying, but you do it in a way that is jovial and friendly. And very respectful and of others, because I think that's what makes you a good leader is there's Chris has a good saying, I think that you'd probably agree with, where he says pride doesn't pay the mortgage.
No.
There's no point trying to be too that take all the credit or pride. I mean, you're one that doles it out for your team, and I respect you for that.
And then just one more comment on masterminding is like the magic can't happen in the masterminding until like there's no ego. It's amazing. But when you're just there to learn from other people, it's just incredible what comes out of that. But if everybody's, and I just know this from being in a lot of alpha male environments, when everybody's like chest out trying to prove who's the coolest, there's not a lot of masterminding coming out of that.
Wisdom, brother. Hey, thanks so much for your time today. It's been a cool episode, and we will chat soon, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
You're listening to Mistake-Free Real Estate Radio, the authority in passive real estate investing. No late-night calls, no clogged drains, no tenant nightmares. Take the passive investor's approach to real estate investing and trust a turnkey professional. Learn more at mistakefreerealestate.com. Until next time, remember, you don't get rich from what you earn, you get rich from what you own.